Welcome everyone to Heritage Mezcal. I am Chava, Peribán, your host. I am here again with Jon Darby. Jon.
Hi, Chava.
How are you doing?
And everyone.
You brought something to share with us. Can you describe what is the bottle that we have in front?
The bottle that I've got here is it's just something that I've written. It's my handwriting. It's from a community called San Mateo Yucatindu. Yucatindu or Yucatindu? Double O at the end.
Itanduchi de Guerrero.
No. This is in Oaxaca. San Mateo Yucatindu.
Okay.
I brought this as an example to rally against being told I'm a Puritan that doesn't
that hates everything that's
sort of
new.
Only works with sort of multiple generational mezcaleros and stuff. That's not me. I'm happy to.
You're an innovator.
Turn about an innovator, but just more of a showcaser of whatever I find going on. And I thought this is interesting because it's from this community, as I say, which is really far out. It's like 5 hours west of Oaxaca on roads into the Solid Vega region. It's like the furthest reaches of the Solid Vega region. And it's a place, I met a guy invited me here after meeting him at the Maestro Mezcaleros event a couple of years ago, actually, in Mexico City. And it's a community that used to grow for at least a generation, maybe a generation and a half. It just purely grew mota, marijuana.
Yeah, I'm familiar with what mota is. Yeah,
you are, but maybe not everyone else. It's a community that has just the only crop of the community was growing marijuana for the cartels, I guess,
or for their own. They were probably independent producers, packers, and sellers. We don't know. No,
we don't know, but I would assume that it was largely, we're not
going to speculate about that. But anyways, they moved from.
But so the point is that I assume it's the export market because the export market, of course, of the last few years, that product is now pretty much legal all across the US. So the market for growing it in rural Mexico has dried up.
Which happens, yeah.
So this community, which just previously, like the guy who invited me, his dad spent his whole life tending to fields of marijuana. That's how he spent his whole career, his whole life. And now they've switched to growing agave because no one's buying the marijuana. And so it's become a kind of a garden of agave, which they sell to the more well-known mezcal communities like Solid Vega, Santa Catarina, Minas.
Okay.
They're buying their agaves. And this particular guy is motivated to encourage people in the community to start building new palenques. They're building alembic stills made of stainless steel, cheap.
Okay, but you have to serve that first and then keep on talking.
Yeah,
Senor Jon, I'm sorry. You're one of those people. Yes.
So, talking to him.
Hola. Wow.
And anyway, so it's a story of real life, real time mezcal development, where mezcal, agave, and mezcal is providing a real income for this community whose income previously dried up because that product wasn't selling anymore. And it's an interesting development story.
And which agave is this again?
Arroqueño.
Oh wow.
It's super lactic, isn't it?
It is super lactic, but it also, I spent 3 days sampling or tasting multiple distillations out of stainless steel, and there is an indication to me of this that went through stainless steel. Maybe it's just
it's not by any means my favorite mezcal, but we were talking previously off camera or some other time about me being a Puritan and. I think in the same way, I think it's okay that some other more gimmicky brands that are doing low ABV products, or it's okay that they exist. It's also okay that new people start to make stuff like this. It's not neither of them are necessarily my favorites, but.
And I told you right before we started this episode that we were going to talk about your food recommendations in the UK, but I was just messing with you. I always had a hard time eating in London, except Indian food. I love the Indian food in London. Everything else, I've suffered.
I miss the Indian food when I'm in Mexico. So the first thing I do actually when I go home is I go for an Indian,
really,
or fish and chips.
Hey, yeah, both glorious things. But really, what I want to talk to you, and I think that's a contentious, not necessarily. It can get contentious. It's this definition of scale of what is small and when does it stop being small and what does that entail? So
In terms of batch of mezcal, you mean?
yeah, I mean, and I think you do hold a significant pride in your projects in Gusano about having batches that are the teeny tiniest thing out there, that it's really hard for any other brand to work with just that few amount of liters. And can you describe a little bit like that the scales that you work currently with?
Well, yeah, it's the scale of the stuff I work with is not really. It's borderline commercially viable. It's not worth the time of doing it, really.
Except your time, that is very cheap. But
so I mean, the sort of batches that I will buy, or even part batches that I will buy for export and bottling, or just selling in or using at tasting events or whatever in the UK, could be anything from 10 litres as its smallest, up until like up to 200 litres. I've never bought anything more than 200 meters. I mean, I just, it was a small project, so I can't sell more than 200 litres in one go yet. But I do also think that the smaller the batches is, the more interesting it gets, I think that it just makes sense in a way that that the producer that's making it all by hand is going to be paying more attention to every little bit of the process if it's.
I mean, sure. I mean, that sounds like a sensitive thing to say, but I think the obliged question is, what is that limit? Mm-hmm. Which is that border? Is that 10,000 liters a year? Is 20,000, 50,000 liters a year? Where would you place that border, in your very personal opinion? And I know it's a very unscientific, very just like what comes from your chest. But what would you say?
I mean, I know that. Because I refer to the things I work with as small batch or micro batch stuff, and it's, as I say, but I'm working with producers and buying stuff from people that the entire batch is often 70 to 80 litres. That's all that's been made.
And when we talk about batches, we are talking about the whole liquid that comes from harvesting a batch of agaves, cooking that whole batch of agaves.
Well, I guess we're talking about one fermentation, because a lot of the producers, particularly like Mio Atlan, producers I work with, will be roasting. They'll be roasted. All the agaves that go into an oven might be owned by more than one person, and then they'll split the agaves out after roasting, and each person will make their batch, which will be, for me, I think the batch would be that ferment rather than that roast.
Oh, really?
So it could be a couple of fermentation tinas, or it could be a single fermentation tina, or whatever. But then everything that gets distilled from that, I think, I would probably...
With that all the unit out of... Okay, that's interesting, because to be very honest, usually the way I think about batches comes from the cooking of the agave.
The one oven.
Yeah. And given I have not been in many places where they will separate what was cooked amongst many people.
Well, not necessarily many people. It could be one producer, but he likes to make, I think that the most old school, if you like, the classic kind of field blend people that will just fill their ovens. You've got an oven of a certain size. It's only worth making the oven. It's obviously a very hard
because you're
work,
going for all the wood.
Process. You're going to use all the wood. You're going to be up at before dawn to load the oven. It's hard work. You're only going to do it when you've got enough agave. So you fill the oven with what's ripe around you. That's ideally not monocropped, and it's like wild or semi-cultivated, whatever stuff. And then you'll end up with an oven that's full of 20% Tepestate, 30% Madriquiche, whatever, and then you might not want to just put them all in the same batch. You might want to make a batch of Madriquiche, a batch of an ensemble of double hard Tepestate or something. Yeah. And so they're obviously going to be different batches. They're going to be...
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I think that's interesting to be probably hyper-focusing on the nomenclature of such a thing, because that is right. And I think this idea of even separating the species is rather varieties is rather new, right? And I guess that thinking about batches in terms of fermentation units can be another way of thinking about it. I just never had, considered such thing.
Well, I mean, as soon as you get to any sort of scale, I guess, because I'm working with particularly small scale, independent family people that are just selling locally pretty much, if they're not selling to me. So yeah, but as soon as you start to get to a scale of any normal export brand, then they're going to be filling the oven with everything they're going to want to make a couple of thousand liters for an export batch, right?
Sure. But have you ever been in that position where you maybe have been working with someone for a while, or that you tried something and then you went, because that is part of your methodology, right? You have to go visit anyone that you are going to be buying from.
Yeah.
You are not okay just with some the WhatsApp pictures and just the WhatsApp audios. You have to be physically at the place where they're making what you're buying.
That has very much been the ethos. Yeah, that's that. I've never bought from anyone that I've
You're
not
a freaking
personally.
maniac. Just saying.
I mean, and I'm not saying no. Never say never. But up until now, yeah, I've only ever bought anything from someone I directly met them, shook their hands, and chatted with them, and seen their process. And
so, given that situation, have you been ever in the position of you tried something that you liked, and then when you visited, it actually turned out that they were way bigger than what you were comfortable with?
Well, no, because as you say, I don't do it that way around. I know that some people.
Well, but sometimes you get a sample, you get some stuff, and that's your excuse to go visit.
But how would I have got the sample without
visiting it?
Without having some idea?
There's these places called bars, and there's events where I actually saw you like a month ago.
You're talking about an event where you meet the producers.
Yeah.
So you speak to the producer when you're there, and you're like,
but sometimes you meet them and you actually get to their palenque, and
they've been
they're different to what you imagined. I mean, that has happened to me more than once.
Yeah. I don't know. We started talking about this thing from Yokotindo, didn't we? I mean, that was like a void. That was like a journey into the unknown and not really knowing what to expect. And I didn't know that they were doing the stainless steel setup, which is, you know, as you said, it gives us flavour, which is probably not as desirable as copper. So that was, you know, it's a long journey, and it's not. But really, this whole thing started with me just like driving around and knocking on doors and finding stuff. The first thing would be finding the palenque. The second thing would be trying their product.
Oh, okay.
That's
what I was trying to get to in a way. Like, okay.
The other way around that's not really how Singosano is operated and up until now. So not so much.
Okay. What is the smallest batch that you've ever bottled in the history of Singosano?
Bottled 20, I think it was it 21 or 12 and a half litres, something like that, from a batch of Jabalí with Tobasiche from Minas. It was a half of a tiny fermentation tina. And it was a bit mad, yeah.
And you made labels, you bottled that, you took a picture of it, you put it on the internet.
It's its own web
page. You did the whole thing for 12 freaking liters.
Yeah, I know, it's a bit mad, isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't use a bit. It is maddening. Definitely, it is maddening.
Yeah, it's an insane amount of work and effort and cost to go into trying to represent like this stuff that's fascinating, you know.
And mind you, you're making that travel all the way across the ocean, which comes with also a whole different level of complexity. So a commitment of selling 12 liters actually gets expanded, I think, in a way. So much work, I'm guessing, to actually make it get to the UK.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't just ship the 12 litres.
You're not crazy.
That'll get put on a pallet of lots of other stuff. But yeah, you got to do all the labelling and the different bottling and the design for that batch, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
But which is crazy, but that's just the problem, is because that is the problem of how I'm always trying to walk the line of like obviously needing to at least a small extent commercialize this thing to make it viable for me to spend my life doing it, but while still trying to represent what is genuinely fascinating about it, which is these tiny batches. Obviously the way to make it easier and to make more money, well, I don't know if people make much money, but the more traditional brand route is to find one producer and ask them to make 20 times as much and just print loads of the same label.
Well, which is nothing wrong with that in a way. You know, like I think that's just a different approach and can be a really fortunate collaboration between bottler, seller, and a producer. So but clearly you're more into the idea of this massive puzzle that has just hundreds or thousands of different pieces.
Well, how does a brand that's repeating the same thing, even if this batch, the first batch, we were discussing what does batch mean, what does size mean, even if the one quite big oven that all gets fermented and all gets distilled and all gets put into one big vat, and that will produce what, 10,000 liters or something?
Oh well, it depends. It depends on which agave and the yield of that. Like, in Oaxaca, they tend to have like smaller kilns. Like I think the biggest that I've ever seen was 15 tons, which is not that big, honestly, in the big scale of things. I think the best possible way of doing something like that is to make a brand that is based on ensembles.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing that more lately.
Mm-hmm.
Brands that are acknowledging that if they want to have a sustainable relationship with a producer, they have to be able to have tolerances and to understand that this year's batch
is going to be a bit different.
Significantly different, and that they need to celebrate that and not be like, oh, sorry, guys.
Well, that's when I think that's the worry, is that obviously there's some good brands and there's some bad brands out there, but the kind of requirement to keep a stock rolling of a uniform product is to have the same thing all the time, and that just is not, as you say, how Mezcal works. You're going to come back to your producer, even if you're buying in relatively large quantities compared to me, you're still going to come back the next year, and the next year's crop, there was a drought, the harvest year or whatever, and it's going to be different.
But honestly, who has a memory that good? I mean, if you tried, even, don't say it, but maybe your favorite mezcal from another brand, let's say the Tepestate from whatever's today, and you had that bottle for 6 months, and then you buy another one in 3 months. I'm sorry. You have to be an absolute, ass in order to really be like, oh, this tastes different. This is unacceptable. I can't believe this. I don't think that's even the profile of the mezcal consumer, and honestly, I don't think anybody has such a precise memory. And the people that are drinking stuff they don't care about it. They're gonna be putting juices and syrups and whatnot. So if it tastes drastically distinct, I don't think it makes a huge difference.
No. It's just, for me, that is what's interesting about it. It's like trying to understand why this one's different to the last one.
Yeah,
that is literally why it's interesting. Otherwise, why don't I just sell gin?
True. Nothing against gin. But wait, I do have one last question in this direction that I was just thinking while we're having the conversation is, has it ever happened that you went through all the process of getting the mezcal up there to the UK and you're like, I can't sell this. This is mine. No, this is mine. This is mine. I want to keep it. Well, does that ever happen?
Yeah, it's kind of like, as we talked about before, it's sort of all started out with me just taking back what I could put in my suitcase as a personal collection and then sharing it with people and starting with sharing with friends. Then the collection
started becoming unsustainable,
then the collection becomes unsustainable.
Size.
And so, there's stuff but my collection is so enormous. My personal collection in my house is enormous, obviously.
Mine is bigger than yours. How many liters do you have? How many bottles do you have?
Well, I've got a lot of...
No, I'm not. We're not.
We're not doing that. But I do have to kind of remind myself sometimes that it's a commercial product as well, and we have to actually sell it. But I think that's a good approach to it, is putting something in a bottle that you really want yourself.
Yeah.
I've always thought that's the best definition of a present when you're buying presents for someone. If it's something that you kind of think, what do I really want to give them now? I kind of want that for myself. Then that's a good present.
You don't know my mother. If I like something for myself, she's very not interested in it. I get your point, but yeah, you don't know my mother. Okay. That's gorgeous. Well, señor joven, señor, that should be the next way in which I should call people, señores jóvenes.
I've finished my copita.
Cheers with air. Thanks for going by, joven.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me in.
Chido, Liro. Nos vemos.
Ciao.
This was Heritage Mezcal, the incredibly eclectic podcast that likes to delve into the depths of the country we call Mexico. I am Chava Peribán, your host, and I truly hope you enjoyed this episode. All the sounds, all the music, and now all the videos living in YouTube are made by Roy Sierra. Tómese el mezcalito con gusto y medida y nos miramos al rato.